Alrighty, welcome to another episode of the Lockdown Podcast. Continuing to pick apart as we do Raw and SmackDown, and most recently Elimination Chamber. And so let's just kind of get to the nitty gritty here. So Raw kicked off with Gunther doing Gunther things, and as Gunther is basically getting escorted out of the ring by Adam Pearce. Um, Dragon Lee, obviously the partner once upon a time with AJ Styles, attacks Gunther, and then obviously it even falls out even pretty much after they go to something else, and then comes back to the back of the the back of the entrance of the arena, and they're continuing to fight. So I hope we at least get something with that in the near time. To let him, fight it out once again, even though obviously Gunther destroyed him last time, but you know, let it ride. But
Yeah.
so um anyway, sorry. So the Usos and Cody Rhodes, once again, we get the same grouping of things where like, okay, well, this we're gonna have this little back and forth spat, which obviously leads us into a match later. Not really a surprise. Um, but and so we have the final triple threat for the last spot in Elimination Chamber. It was Jey Uso versus Bronson Reed versus the original El Grande Americano, and at some point in the match, Bronson Reed really just did a move just not good
Yeah.
and ends up obviously hurting his shoulder. I think it was tore a bicep muscle or something or other like that. And it's unfortunate, obviously, because we didn't have a whole lot of heel anything for Elimination Chamber, so it kind of unbalanced the normalcy of Elimination Chamber when you had you had half heels, half face. But it looks like we obviously got a bunch of faces in there. Um, but obviously the pivot ends up being Jey Uso winning. And so that basically filled out the match card for Elimination Chamber. And yeah, so I kind of don't like the fact that they forced essentially Liv Morgan to choose her opponent obviously before Elimination Chamber, so we would know, whoever wins the Elimination Chamber, who they're facing. And I feel like they should leave it more open ended, just being that this is the end of February. We still have all of March in like a portion of April, to figure out those matchups. But it's like it's I don't know if they're just solidifying it just because they wanted to basically make sure who was facing who
Yeah.
and who they could build, you know, the feuds with.
Right.
That's kind of my assumption.
Yeah, I think
I,
so.
but I still I don't like the kind of rushed, segment because like you had Stephanie Vecchia and Jade Cargill come out, but it's like we already knew it would be Stephanie. Like it wasn't some like mystery because there was way more segments with Stephanie than there ever was anything to do with Jade. Like Jade was out there literally just kind of to just be there, but yet no real interaction with her other than a slight glance, and Liv Morgan says her name and then turns and then obviously does what she does. But it's like you might as well just like why you could have done away with this segment. Like,
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
it was
I
just filler.
I I'm starting to realize that we're WWE is having a timing issue, and whether it be on Raw or the extended time frame of SmackDown. Like you're basically putting in segments that have no real true benefit to storylines. They're just there. They just fill time, and you don't let the things that actually have storylines, let them play out on live TV, and then you end up like the week prior where all of a sudden, you had this whole brawl going out, and then all of a sudden, like, well, the show's done, so done. Like
Right.
you didn't let us even see Randy Orton finish the match. Like you didn't there was nothing. And so it's like if you're going to have such a long show, at least let like the things that matter shine and play down the things that don't. Um, because we're not, the 99.9% of us, the WWE universe are not there. So we don't get to see what happens after the fact. We don't get to see any of that because they just cut it off and then poof, we're done. But like, sometimes you have to go, to someone, maybe a recording on TikTok or something, or Facebook Live or something, to
Mhm.
kind of see that. But that's a rare find. That we might get videos posted after the fact, but it's like, as the fans, we're like, how do you just cut off when it was getting juicy?
Yep.
Um, so, but so once again, Natty just basically pummels the crap out of Maxine Dupree. And I don't know. I think it was kind of Natty's fault and also Maxine Dupree's fault. She, like, however she hit that like rope thing at the end of the post or whatever, like I
Mhm.
think she knocked herself out.
Yeah,
And
or it could have just been like, how they played it, but yeah, it didn't look like, oh, it looked like she like legit just crumbled, in my opinion.
yeah, I mean, either way, it definitely goes to further this Natty, bad person character persona.
Yeah.
So whether it was, incidental or actually on purpose, I mean, however you play it, it does good for Natty.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, I feel like if they're not going to have any championship aspirations for Natty, moving forward, the character's really all for
Unfortunate.
nothing.
Yeah. I think
And
that the they've gotta have something. There's gotta be a build up or a payoff rather for this. So
yeah, it's happening a lot where you have compelling storylines, but you don't have anything like they're moving towards. It's just a consistent like storyline that doesn't have anything in the end.
right.
So, but whatever. I mean, it's we're kind of getting whatever we're given at this point. I mean, and I like I said, I've said for a long time, I hope that 2026 is a year of changes and better storylines, better builds, better matches. Um, but thus far, honestly, I feel like it's kind of a failed product. So,
Yeah.
and
There's still
and
room for improvement. The year's not over with yet, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, and obviously we're not the only people that talk about this. I mean, there's you know other there's tons of other podcasts and YouTubers and TikTok and whatever it be that share the same sentiment about WWE product currently. So now I I kind of this was a situation with old Brock Lesnar, whatever comes out with Paul Heyman, and basically has an open challenge for WrestleMania, which I feel like, given that Dragon Lee and Gunther have something going on, I feel like we're going to get Obafemi and Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Now I don't know if Brock Lesnar basically doing this is kind of a pivot from the injuries and everything else that they've had go on.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I kind of wanted to save that question for the end of it, but I feel like it just kind of needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so like, what are your thoughts on the fact that like we're just getting this Brock Lesnar situation to basically, be not necessarily filler, but like a more high
Mhm.
end match at WrestleMania?
Yeah, I don't. It has. There probably has a lot to do with Brock Lesnar and this match. As a culmination of things, like what we've heard about poor ticket sales, injury bugs, not really having like a lot of draw power for the show.
Yeah.
So they're gonna probably throw everything at this WrestleMania to try to salvage what it's been, which has been pretty lackluster in my opinion. Um, yeah, I literally think that we're gonna Brock Lesnar being here and what we'll get from Brock Lesnar will probably be um their last best effort to salvage this WrestleMania season. Um, yeah, I don't see how it can really get super interesting between now and WrestleMania with what they have. They've got a lot of injuries. The storylines have not been entertaining or engaging. There's been a few bright spots, but overall, it seems like last year's WrestleMania was much better in
Yeah.
comparison. So
Yeah.
we'll have to
And
see what they pick for Brock Lesnar, but I do think it'll probably be like some type of big man match. Obafemi, maybe Omos. Um,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
I don't see any. Yeah, yeah.
and it does suck that, I mean, they've been hit with the injury bug, pretty, bad the last like 6 months. And, I mean, it's the name of the game, but at the same token, like, I think some of it falls on, the other performer. I think some of it falls on, the people, the management and back. Maybe
Mhm.
asking too much of certain wrestlers, maybe asking too much in certain spots that, have a risk factor of injury. And I think obviously, yes, the performer obviously, makes mistakes and and everything, but I feel like the stuff with like Bronson Reed, I feel like I it just looked like he just overshot what he was doing. But again, that is a big ass man trying to do that move,
Right, and
and
he's probably
I've
done it before. It's you know freak injury time. Yeah,
yeah.
like you're saying. You know,
Yeah, so I feel like they definitely need to protect the wrestlers, and especially if you have certain wrestlers and certain storylines, you need to protect them the best you can to get to WrestleMania or to get to Elimination Chamber in this in this sense. Like a lot of the times these people having these matches, not necessarily like the triple threat that they had for to qualify, but like
mhm.
just in general when they have these people fight, have matches like one-on-one matches that really mean nothing, like the day before a PLE or something, and then something happens and then they have to pivot. And I think, again, that's 100% on WWE creative. That is the wrestlers just doing their job, but the majority of the blame is the fact that you put them in that position to have a match so close, especially when you have characters that mean a lot to the storyline. I think they need to kind of stop these last, 24-hour, before they go, wrestle at a PLE to wrestle the day before.
But then if they don't have that build up, then it'll seem out of place.
Yeah.
I think with the injuries that have happened over the last 6 to 9 months, I think some of them have just been like, unexpected. You've seen these performers do these similar type movements dozens of times before, hundreds of times before, even, uh, and then they just get hurt. I think with Brunson Reed, there could have been something like underlining that we
Yeah.
don't know about. With Braun Breaker, The Rock got a hernia injury during his match with John Cena years ago, and well, it was his abs, I think, and it caused like a hernia as well. Um, just doing a rock bottom or something like that. So, these types of
Yeah.
things happen, um, but we need, we. I don't know what could change and what could make you know
Yeah. Well,
what could make
and
it better, but in regards to protecting the performer that's about to have like a high stakes match, but at the same time, the show has to go on, and they're gonna do the best that they can.
and yeah, and sometimes I guess obviously if if they're not pushing the limits, they're not looking like they should in order to
Yeah,
get over. So
yeah,
it's unfortunate. I mean, it does suck whether you're like your heels or you're like your faces. Like I don't like injuries, to, the whole roster in its entirety, just because, when we as, the fans and, multiple other podcasters, like when we're very invested in certain storylines and we're really trying to build it ourselves, like we're really trying to sell it ourselves. So for anybody who listens, like, I want to have people getting excited for it too. And I want to
right,
get amped,
right,
and then it's like when shit happens, it happens. And then you just, you have to, pivot just like WWE does and try to figure out some other avenue to build up the fan base, into these pivoted storylines.
yeah.
Um, so we get Javon Evans versus Kofi Kingston. Um, I don't think there's a whole lot of build to this, but I think, this is again much like an Oba Femi situation where they're really trying to get over, these call ups from NXT. And I mean, it's wild to me because there was a spot in this match where Javon Evans had to fix Kofi Kingston to hit the final spot where he. So basically, the gist of it is he basically was running towards Kofi, basically that kind of rattled, and he basically kind of like swung his arm to get him set up to take the OG cutter. And that's mind blowing to me, being that he's 21 years old. I mean, the young OG. I mean, he really lives up to that moniker, that name, because you see a very polished performer that's literally 21 years old. I mean, dude, he has a 20-year, you know, plus career ahead of him. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, uh, you look at the roster now, we got guys in their 40s, and here he is half that. I mean, and what was crazy is that he was born, like, I think it was either before, like, I think the Elimination Chamber is older than him.
Yeah.
I and I think the Elimination Chamber, I think, started in, like, 2001 or 2002 or something. And so, like, the Elimination Chamber match is older than Javon Evans. Like, let that sink in.
Mhm.
But, obviously does get the win, obviously, over Kofi. Definitely good build for him. Then we get the cliche CM Punk. I guess we'll call it nonsense. I feel
Mhm.
like Cody Rhodes and CM Punk are two sides of the same coin when it comes to their promos. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're just
Yes.
it's whether it's Cody saying, "What do you want to talk about?" or CM Punk saying, isn't it great to be alive on a Monday night in whatever city or state they're in? Like it's to the point where it's like I just mute the TV because I already know
Mhm.
what's getting said. I'll play a game on my phone for like 10 minutes while he does whatever he's doing because they've gotten so vanilla with their promos. It's like, yep, okay, cool. You're saying the same thing. Yep, all right, well, move on. Okay, next thing was there a match next? Because kind of done with this. Um, but we do actually have a match next. But so we had again one of the last qualifier spots for Elimination Chamber. You had Raquel Rodriguez versus Io Sky and Kairi Sane, and man, I definitely think Raquel is definitely a near future champion. Um, I think Liv being hurt actually benefited Raquel Rodriguez.
Mm,
Um, getting a little more singles stuff under her belt. Um, and obviously getting the spot in this triple threat to go to Elimination Chamber again is her hard work paying off. So obviously does get the win. So Raquel is the final spot in Elimination Chamber. And so we get to the end of Monday Night Raw, which was the time and spot given to AJ um to basically, give his farewells and everything else. And, not, I mean, I guess pun intended, but it was a phenomenal, closure.
right.
Um, I think it's, if you haven't really known too much of AJ's backstory, you got a little bit of it in this last part, basically, having, a wife that has pushed him to work in this industry, which is very hard for, marriages and couples and everything that aren't in the business together.
Yeah.
And so, it speaks a lot to not only his career, but like, his wife that has, stood by him,
Hmm.
and I think, marriages nowadays, I feel like it's hard enough when you're together all the time, let alone, AJ being on the road and performing all over the world, and and to have that support system at home, I think again speaks highly not to just AJ but his wife and his family. And so it's kind of a cool segment. And then and I was happy they let this run over a little bit because I like they all of a sudden like put like the ending like promo thing, but then like they did that and then they let the show keep going, which I thought was nice because like
Yeah.
we always get cut off on stuff. and
Yep.
And so, you had everybody come out, and they had the crowd yelling AJ Styles and everything else, and then you hear the gong of the Undertaker. Undertaker basically comes out to basically tell AJ that he's getting inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in April at WrestleMania weekend, which I think is well deserved. I feel like it's a little bit quick, but you know, I I feel like because we're getting subjected to Stephanie McMahon getting inducted, which I could care less about. Um, but and he's so basically like this is kind of why John Cena is not getting inducted all this year. I definitely think he should be on the ballot next year for sure. But it also kind of cuts AJ Styles stuff kind of soon because usually the secondary Hall of Fame ceremony inductees usually don't get that much time. Um, and maybe they won't have as many inductees, and maybe AJ will get proper time.
Right.
Um, because in years past, I mean, they give them less than 10 minutes out there, and I hope because again, here we are, we're a month and a half from WrestleMania, and we're just only at two inductees. And
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they're probably gonna have the Hall of Fame moment thing like they did last year, which I didn't really care for. But I wish they'd bring back the Warrior Award. Um, I thought that was,
Yeah.
something very cool, to, be recognized as an individual that, has persevered and stuff like that, outside of the WWE, but also being a WWE fan, but getting recognition, for essentially being a good person.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's kind of dumb to have it they got rid of the Warrior Award last year to basically have this like WrestleMania match or like this whatever match to go in the Hall of Fame, and I thought it was kind of silly, but I digress. But so SmackDown starts off with basically, a whole slew of people in back, after Jey Uso got attacked. And, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't happy that he got attacked, but I was happy that we were gonna get someone else in Elimination Chamber because I think I was part of the millions and millions that were like, that's all we need is to Jaded go in the middle of Elimination Chamber and do that nonsense. So like, I hope he's fine. I and obviously this is this is pretend. This isn't like a real
Right.
thing. But hopefully he goes back to the tag team division to do what he does with that, being that his brother and him are the tag team champions. And so go back to doing that. Like I've said it a million times over. I hate when current champions go into, matches for other titles when they barely do anything with the current title they actually have. So I hope that we get something in the works for
Yeah,
Jimmy
I'm
and
sure.
Jay at
Yeah,
WrestleMania.
as
So
soon as Jimmy comes back from paternity leave, and
I mean
baby,
he's already back. He
and
just
yeah,
he was kind
so
of back for a little bit and then
I,
wasn't back this week. So
yeah, I think it'll be. Yeah, it could be just like they're just writing him off because Jimmy's going to be gone a little bit longer.
yeah, because
Yeah,
he was back for a little bit, and I think that was just to kind of for storyline sake. And I
yeah,
wish they would go back to the Down Since Day One music. I hate that they come out to Jey Uso's music, but obviously, I wish they would modify the original Down Since Day One. They could add some yeet factor into that. But I think it's silly to come out to literally talking about yourself. The song is purely about Jey Uso. And so it's like it doesn't really fit when you're back to being a tag team with your brother. So,
yeah,
but basically after that whole bit, we obviously get Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, LA Knight, Javon Evans, and Trick Williams out, in the ring, and obviously it ends up in a spat.
yeah,
And, it kind of it fit and it made sense. Obviously I don't mind when they have these little bits before, a match. Just to kind of build the credibility of the match. So, because you basically seen, Randy Orton obviously clean house as he does, and kind of looks at Cody and then just kind of walks out. So, um, I don't know. I like these little bits. I love seeing people take RKO's. It's like it's
yeah. It
literally the
is.
best thing in wrestling is to see
Yeah,
someone
it
take an
is.
RKO. I
Yeah.
don't know. There's just there's something fun about it.
Mhm.
You're like, how good are they going to take an RKO?
Right.
Ooh. So, so we finally get like a straight up match between Uncle Howdy and Solo Sokoa, and you know, there was really nobody ringside until obviously after the fact of the win. But obviously,
Mhm.
Uncle Howdy does get the win over Solo Sikoa, and then it just explodes into what we all know what it explodes into, and that's the MFTs coming out and the Wyatt Six coming out, and I mean, I don't like I don't care about this feud, but I hate that like the tag team division basically gets put on the back burner because of this spat between said big group of 5 people and another big group of 5 people, and they're just feuding, but like, the rest of the tag team division is just kind of like, so like they they get stuck in the back burner because of the whole, feud. But
Yeah.
but
What are
so
you
our
gonna
next,
do? WWE. Yeah.
yeah, so our next match we get Tiffany Stratton versus Kyrie Sane, and man, poor Kyrie Sane. Like the girl, I mean, Asuka treats her like crap, and obviously, this is character work. This is whatever, but it's like it's just fun. It's just fun to kind of really see Asuka just basically being like the alpha
Yeah.
of the two, and
Yeah.
Kyrie just walks around like a puppy dog. And in this case, obviously, Asuka basically throws Kyrie Sane to the wolves and um gets the crap kicked out of her by Tiffany Stratton, which you know, whatever. But
Yeah.
um,
Anything. Yeah.
and then the next match we had was Obafemi versus The Miz, and obviously The Miz being the king of taking L's and still making it look good. But yeah, I like that they're kind of starting to put more viable people in Obafemi's way for him to absolutely annihilate. Um,
Yeah. Definitely
you
build
know,
that up. Um,
yeah,
so we can, you know, so it's much more believable as a he's much more believable as a monster in the ring.
right, yeah. And he's like a gentle giant too. It's not like he's not really playing a heel either. So it's like he's just kind of he's finding his footing by
Hmm.
doing what he does best, and that's basically be dominant.
Yeah.
Um, so so our next match we did have another United States Championship Open Challenge, obviously answered by one Matt Cardona, and I'm not mad at these matches regardless if the champion loses or wins. I
Hmm.
think, and I've said this a million times over, is that I like titles being like the secondary titles, which are kind of defined as the workhorse titles, are being defended weekly.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Carmelo is doing a way better job than Dominic.
Well,
And the problem is with I mean Dominic is that like you have plenty of competitors to fight against. So why aren't you letting these matches happen?
you know, it 100% goes back to that same old recipe and that same old trope. One's a heel, one's a face. Faces are going to work so they can get the people behind them, and heels are going to work their way so they can get the disdain or disrespect from people. So it's part of the trope. Does it suck? Yes, it does. Could we see some more entertaining, like heel like matches from Dominic? Of course we could. Uh, but it's just what they're doing. Also,
Um,
Dominic could still be rehabbing and nursing that injured shoulder that he got back in AAA a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, rather. So they could just be allowing that to happen. Um, yeah, it could be any number of things. So, I'm
yeah,
I'm tired of the trope. I think we can have heels and faces that are fighting champions and still get the same outcomes that we want.
Well, yeah, I don't like, and then like I've said a million times, I don't care if there's squash matches, but just give me some believability of them being what they say they are, right? I mean,
Right.
I we you know I've done this for the pretty much the length of this podcast, talking about main event Jey Uso, right, and
Right.
talking about him having that moniker, and and I was always about like, hey, if he's not champion, I don't care. But what you presented, and I believe Tim as well, is basically that it's not not necessarily about the title, it's about having top tier matches. And so, you know, but again, with these, with this title thing, it's like, just have some squash matches. I don't care. Just like, otherwise you just look rusty, crusty, dusty, musty because you're not doing anything, and Jade has worked hard to work off that rust and that
Mhm.
stiffness in the ring, and now you're really doing nothing. And yeah, maybe she's having matches in the PC, but that's not the same.
Right.
So, I just, I want some kind of build. So next we got Jordan Grace versus Candice LeRae, and I mean, it was about as what you'd expect. I mean, this is mid level at best. Really, just good filler. It's unfortunate that as dominant as Jordan Grace was, in other promotions, and then she did, the NXT run for a while, and now she's on the main roster, and I really feel like they're still not doing anything. And
Yeah.
it's really confusing because, like, you have a deep women's roster, right? I mean, you have untapped potential of matchups you could have, feuds you could build, and yet again we get the same vanilla pudding, you know, matchups and everything else. I mean, I don't understand why you have all of these people at your disposal and you're doing jack shit with them. And creative is about as creative as my 9-year-old. I mean, they're just not doing a good job. And like I said, we're not the only ones saying it, right? I'm gonna take one out of
Mhm.
Becky Lynch's book. We're not the only ones that are saying it. Like a million other podcasts are saying it. I'm sure ESPN's saying it,
Mm.
because I guarantee you, ESPN, I guarantee you, Netflix, USA, I guarantee you, they're all on the same wavelength saying that this product sucks, and we paid for more than this, and we're getting vanilla pudding. And I guarantee you it's all of them. I mean, I think they're all in unison.
Mhm.
But so so we finally get the Irresistible Forces, Nia Jackson, Lash Legend
Right.
versus Rhea Ripley and Io Sky. And it only made sense. I'll touch on it like just a little bit before I kind of get into what I want to talk about.
Okay.
But like, it's real convenient that Rhea Ripley wins her spot in Elimination Chamber, right? But she's still
Right.
champion. And it's really convenient that they lose,
Mhm.
you know, to lose their titles, obviously. And then so now she can go into Elimination Chamber, you know. So,
Yeah.
and it's that's like, you clearly did that because we knew the outcome, right?
Mhm.
Um, but so we get into Elimination Chamber. Um, yeah. So, quick, I'll just go quick over Are You In and Out, and then we'll
All
talk
right.
about Elimination Chamber. But
Let's go. Yep.
um, Are you in or out? Obviously, on like AJ's induction. Obviously, I'm in.
Yeah.
I wish I wish Tim was here so we could really kind of pick apart it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in for AJ Styles induction. I think it's well deserved. And like I kind of touched on before, is that maybe they have less inductees and they allow more time for, AJ Styles to talk. Obviously, Stephanie McMahon being the headliner, as they say, which again, I could care less for. I think it's like, what's next? Shane McMahon? I mean,
Yeah, I
you
doubt
know,
it would be Shane, but yeah, I am. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think
I,
I think it'll be a couple of more people. Maybe someone who's passed away that they induct. Um, yeah, I don't think it'll be a big group of people this year. But yeah, AJ Styles. Uh, yeah, yeah. Let's definitely celebrate his work
yeah,
and go from there.
yeah. And so the next thing, obviously, and we kind of talked about is Brock Lesnar's open challenge for WrestleMania a pivot because of multiple injuries?
Yep.
And
He doesn't.
obviously
Yeah.
we've talked pretty much in agreement of that, and that's Brock Lesnar's a draw,
Yeah.
even after being in the company for literally 20 plus years. I mean, he's a draw no matter what, and so we're definitely going to get a good match. I don't think WWE is going to miss an opportunity to basically pin a big man versus Brock Lesnar because it's a draw. So,
Yeah.
um, and the next thing, Jay's attacker being someone in his circle,
Hmm.
because you had the segment and the thing with Sammy talking to um, Jacob Fatu, saying, "Oh, it's real convenient that this happens," and then all of a sudden you go right to Nick Aldis and ask for, to be in the match. And I don't think it's coincidence that happened.
Yeah.
Now, do I think Jacob did it? I don't think so.
No.
But
Um. I think. I think probably they'll pin it on Sammy, and they'll have Sammy go with it. It's about time. He does like a heel run. Maybe Kevin Owens is getting ready to return if he's ever cleared, because of his neck injury and neck surgery. Um, could be level of frustration. You're always getting the win, Jay. You don't. Yeah. So they could have did that, and Sammy doing a misdirection, so people will look at Jacob. Um yeah, I don't, yeah, I don't know if it'll be like that. But I think it was good for business
yeah,
to not have Jay be in the elimination chamber and have younger people be in the elimination chamber
yeah,
with Javon Evans and with Trick Williams. So yeah, that works for
yeah,
me.
yeah. And so obviously you did have that, that pivot. Obviously, at the end of the night, you basically had, Logan Paul versus Jacob Fatu. Um, and so obviously, Logan gets the win on that, obviously, and so
Yeah.
then you have the new chamber person. So, um, now my last question is again kind of leads into the other, but like, conveniently Rhea and Io losing to Nia Jackson, Lash Legend for the women's tag team titles. Obviously the Universal is it's real convenient. But it also kind of ruins Elimination Chamber because everybody was kind of thinking the same thing. Because you go into Elimination Chamber obviously with the first match of the night, and you basically have um I think it was Tiffany Stratton and Asuka, I believe, was kicking it off, or Kiana James, I think it was. And so you had Rhea, Raquel, Alexa Bliss, and I think it was Asuka actually,
Mhm.
in the pods. and Tiffany Stratton and Kiana James starting it off. But I mean, it just I legitimately am sitting there watching it, right? And I'm pretty much predicting. I predicted, with the exception of mixing up Raquel and Rhea, I literally was basically already saying like, who's getting eliminated first, who is coming out of the pods first,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like it's just weird. Like it's the point where I can watch it and literally basically predict what's going to happen because WWE is consistently predictable. Um, and obviously Rhea does get the win. Basically pinning Tiffany Stratton, which I again would rather have seen Raquel Rodriguez. Um, just because
Yeah.
opposite shows of the Judgment Day, and it would have been more exciting to see her go do her own thing.
Yeah.
And
However,
but
if you're looking at the future, you know, WWE and the immediate future is what I'm
yeah,
meaning. For WrestleMania, you need a ring general. Jade is not that.
yeah,
You need someone who's gonna take the lead with that match. Um, Rhea, Rhea understands pro wrestling better than Jade. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't have put Raquel in that position, even though she has a lot of history. I think I think it would have worked out better with Rhea
yeah,
leading that match, and maybe it'll turn into a triple threat. You know,
yeah,
who knows? Who knows with WWE? I just know with Rhea, they're at least going to get a solid match and
yeah,
solid performance out of both of them. Because if you would have anyone else, it would have been a squash match, and because
yeah,
it wouldn't have been believable, and that would have been a letdown for everybody watching. So
yeah.
with this, we can at least have a good 10-15 minute match. Um, yeah. So
Well, and so what was kind of interesting in like the entrances of all the performers
mhm.
is like Rhea was the only one that they did like the crowd gauge thing,
Mhm.
and it was bad. It was really bad. Like I could almost say without was short of being there that they were piping in noise.
Of
And
course,
and
they're
I mean
doing that.
it dude, it was so bad because really like the only people that you got really any kind of pop for was Alexa Bliss, Tiffany Stratton, and Rhea Ripley. And like I mean there was nobody on the entrance ramp area like putting their hands out for any of them other than like you know Tiffany, Alexa, and Rhea, and everybody else was just. I mean, obviously Raquel's a heel, so obviously, and same thing with Kiana James, and same thing with Asuka. Obviously, being the heels, they don't do that.
Right.
But it was just like it was funny that they because like Kiana James came out and like she had a good spot in the match. I mean, she did a good job, and but it's just like man, she just got nothing. Like I mean, it was rough to watch because I'm like I'm looking at the crowd and I'm listening to what how they're portraying it, and it's like the
Mhm.
crowd's down there just
Yeah.
and then but then it's like they're piping in the noise that literally is like woo
Yeah.
like no like
That
no one's
airy, like, crowd noise,
yeah, and
like,
it's like
that has
man
been recorded, like,
like if you didn't consistently put out shitty product you wouldn't have to pipe in noise for performers
you know
like
what? I think the build and how people respond, I think with Kiana James is that because she's been attached to Julia, since she's been on the main roster and she hasn't had like a lot of like really big interactions and they haven't built her like you just said. uh yeah, people are going to respond like that. I mean, no one's going to sometimes it's like WWE sets themselves up for criticism and failure to think that people are going to respond to a performer that you've barely given any creative or any direction or any spotlights to and have the crowd react, and then you have uh, you have the decision to put up this noise meter, and expect it for people to say like, yeah, no one made any noise for her,
Well, and
normally.
they should
Yeah,
have never done the meter thing at all.
yeah.
Like, I feel like you basically just proved my point.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
and that's rough.
yeah, really rough.
So the next match we had, um, was Becky Lynch versus AJ Lee, and
Mhm.
I mean, not a whole lot of excitement for this match either. I
Yeah,
mean,
unfortunately.
and like, and the thing is like the sad thing is I kind of anticipated, this PLE being kind of a wash anyways, because like I'm out doing lift and I kind of like was saying in the group like, hey, don't tell me anything, I don't want to hear anything. I stayed off social media to the best of my ability to kind of leave some mystery for me when I watch it. But it's
Right.
like Tim's like, oh, it's kind of boring, and I'm like, oh, great. I get to go. Like, I guess I'll go home and fast forward through this, and
Yeah.
it's bad. Like, it's weird that because I'm like, I'm just kind of like really scrolling through things. I think the show was like almost 2 hours and like 40 something minutes, and I think I probably took a half an hour to watch it. So like, but yeah, AJ Lee obviously does get the win, which again is no real surprise. And then obviously leading into the next match of CM Punk versus Finn Balor, same thing. Obviously, CM Punk wasn't going to lose again. But I do like the inklings of Finn Balor being a little bit more face. I mean, I feel like he's walking the tightrope between bad Finn and good Finn.
Hmm.
Which I feel like we're kind of in that same headspace with Cody Rhodes. We're in that same headspace with Sami Zayn, and so like I like them walking the tightrope. It's just at some point in time I want to have um some culmination. Um, but obviously, speaking of culmination, but so we finally get to see, this whatever crate, that
Hmm.
would say, hey, don't open till Elimination Chamber. And dude, the crowd booed bad
Yeah,
because everyone was
let's
thinking
take a couple of
something way
minutes.
bigger.
Yeah, let's take a couple of minutes and unpack this. So, uh crate opens up, Aldous and Pierce like back away. They have a shot in, then they had, some music with some lyrics come through, then they have all these dancers show up, and it's indie darling Danhausen, right? Um, I feel bad for Danhausen because anybody coming out of that crate other than an A-lister was going to get the same damn reaction, the
Hmm.
same reaction across
Oh
the
yeah.
board. Um, and I feel really bad for Danhausen because one, Danhausen can wrestle, he can work. He has a very unique character and a unique way of working the crowd and understanding pro wrestling. So I'm excited to see what they build for him. I'm really disappointed in how WWE did this. And
Well, the
it literally is just shooting Danhausen's character in the face, and now they get to like rebuild,
well, okay.
Danhausen into
s-
what
yeah.
they are thinking.
So my headspace about this is that, like you said, they didn't they didn't bring an A-lister, right? And now the way they could have introduced Danhausen was not on the main roster, right? They could have
Mhm.
done some angle for NXT and done this same crate thing, like, hey, don't open up till NXT Takeover, and
That could have
presented him
been
down,
that could have been
and then
one way.
presented Danhausen down there, because that's what they've done with a lot of AEW comeovers, with the exception
So
of
here's
with the exception of Cody Rhodes
yeah.
and a couple other,
Yeah.
like,
Here's the thing
they,
about with Danhausen. I think the crate should have not been used for Danhausen. I don't think that was a good payoff. As an alternative, I like your idea of NXT if that's where he was going to be. Um, I think would have been better, a better introduction would have been Danhausen showing up during CM Punk's match with Balor. Not for interference, but definitely as a distraction, because Danhausen and CM Punk both have a history together. It's a positive history. Danhausen has a gimmick where he will curse someone and they subsequently are cursed and they have bad luck or they lose or whatever have you. It's part of its gimmick, it's part of its appeal. I like it. I think that would have been a much better use of introducing Danhausen as opposed to what they did. I'm not 100% on that. The last time that we got a crate of some sorts that I can immediately remember is with Sting. Nobody's booing Sting, all right? And like I said, anybody other than an A-lister, S tier
yeah,
talent would have gotten that same reaction. So now they've got to dig out of the hole of what they put Danhausen in, and I feel some kind
yeah,
of way because Danhausen hasn't been utilized the last couple of years in a way that has been positive,
yeah,
or at all. And so for him to come over and to get that kind of mid reaction from the crowd, which by the way, the crowd was already acting really mid because WWE has not been acting top tier themselves.
yeah,
So all around, I give that segment like 2 thumbs down.
yeah,
And it's not because of Danhausen. It's because of everything else.
yeah.
That could have waited until Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, I mean, and well, the thing is too is that, like, you know, Danhausen, even though obviously, having a good history, I still feel like would have been something better for to bring him into NXT. Because and only
Mhm.
because, not because of how the handful of us who actually know the history of him and what in his performance and everything else, is that it's more or less like, you're not top tier to the fan base, right? And again, like, if you know, you
Mhm.
know, if you don't, you don't. I mean, it's the
Right.
same thing about knowing like when I watch NXT and most people
Mhm.
don't watch NXT, so I know about the stars coming up to the main roster, but a lot of people don't. And so that's how I view the Danhausen thing, is that, like, I know thing I was okay with it, kind of, but like how
Mhm.
they presented him in the
Yeah.
space and everything else, it was a detriment to his appearance and debut.
You know
And
what?
so,
I agree. I do agree with your alternative, your take on it, your point of view. Yeah, this would have been perfect for NXT. But obviously they're not gonna have him do a stint in NXT because he debuted, on the main roster. And if he was gonna be in NXT, he would have debuted on Takeover.
yeah,
Um, I think if they could have done anything else with that box, they could have pivoted and just been like, throw in one of old Chris Jericho's old light up jackets and have that turned on. Just you know what I'm saying? They
yeah.
could
I
have
mean,
done anything.
left it a cliffhanger still,
Yes, like
but we don't know when he's going to appear,
right.
and so
And
I thought they
yeah.
creatively did it in an awful way.
Hmm.
And the thing is that, like, I would have been just as excited to see him at NXT at Takeover if they basically did what they did when Cody came back, was you have this opponent, when Seth Rollins said at WrestleMania, in Texas, actually, me and Tim were at the show, so it was actually kind of fun to hear the pop. But like, for them to do that for Danhausen, what I think would have been way better. And even if he only did a brief stint in NXT, at least build up the understanding of him and the backstory, and then give him a little bit more of a backstory to build him getting pushed to the main roster. But they didn't, and it wasn't that they did it, it was how they did it.
Mhm.
And it was to the detriment, of him. And like I said, I think we all feel, me and you feel the same thing. It's like, it kind of sucks for him because like he's a he's a great performer. We if you know, if you don't, you don't. But it's like, most of us, like, we're watching it, we're like, oh yeah, cool, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But like the
I
people,
mean,
but
yeah.
if you're at a live show and you have to experience that in real time, you're like, well, this fucking sucks. Like,
Yeah, because, it's
you
not Chris Jericho who
yeah,
everyone, is thinking that is gonna show back up in WWE. Anything other than an A-lister coming back. You know what? It could have been like a world champion from TNA. It could have been the TNA world champion Mike Santana, coming out of the box, and he probably would have got booed too. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? It could have, yeah,
it's all in the presentation of
yeah,
how they did it.
and
And
they
if that's what we have to rely on for WWE creative, God, we're in trouble.
And just as we taper off and we get ready to talk about something else on Elimination Chamber, I heard a couple of dirt sheets reports that saying it was a split of whether or not they should do this, and everyone that said we shouldn't do this is now like, well, we told you, and everyone that says like, yeah, we're going to do this is like, well, we probably shouldn't have listened, probably should have listened. So I get it. You're going to take some shots, and some of them are going to be air balls. This was an air ball. This
Yeah.
really was, and it,
Yeah.
I know Danhausen they didn't bring in Danhausen just as filler, as a joke. They brought him in because they know they can sell so much merch with Danhausen.
Yeah.
Oh, can you imagine shirts and puppets and hats and masks and just
Yeah. I
they
mean,
can,
it's
yeah, just so much with Danhausen.
yeah.
And I just think that I feel some kind of way. I feel sad, and I feel like, ooh, that's got to sting a little bit, Danhausen. But at the same time, congratulations, Danhausen.
Right.
You are there. Hopefully you get to do some things with CM Punk and their comedy gold. I really hope he does some stuff with R-Truth, and it's just the greatest thing.
Yeah.
I think they have, if they don't do anything with R-Truth and Danhausen doing some type of Scooby Doo like mysteries, or
Yeah.
just anything with those two, I think could be like long term
Yeah.
funness. So
Yeah. So to the men's elimination chamber,
mhm.
um, you know, it wasn't bad.
Mhm.
Um, but like, Javon showed out, Trick showed out, everybody showed out. I think everybody performed well in the elimination chamber. And, when you got down to the last two being Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes, and then you had, the interference by Drew McIntyre and all of that hoopla. It wasn't a terrible match. Obviously, we've seen, the return of Seth Rollins as well,
Mm.
which and so I did a little recon in regards to the guy that you seen on Friday. Is it Friday or Monday
Mhm.
when they unmasked that guy and nobody had any idea who it was. And then we had the same thing, on Saturday at Elimination Chamber, same thing. And from what I read, and I don't know if both of them are, but the inkling that I'm getting, they both are. These are guys. At least one confirmed is one of the wrestlers that's in Seth Rollins' wrestling school. I think it's
Mm.
called the Black and Gold something or other. And so I would just safe to assume that like one was confirmed, but I kind of assumed that both were. And so I thought
Black and
honestly,
Gold. Yep.
yeah, I think honestly every person that was the mass person were different people. I think this was like I said before, and we all agree on it, is that this was basically a waiting point and a build point to Seth Rollins coming back, because obviously Seth Rollins was the last one, but he wasn't any of the other ones. Um,
Mhm.
and so you could tell by the mannerisms, and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people just played the character just for fun, because obviously I think Grayson Waller was one of them. I think there was a smothering of other people that were one, just to basically be placeholders for the return of Seth Rollins, um, which again is no real surprise. Um, but so you get to the end of the match, and like I said, Drew comes in, does whatever. Randy Orton gives him an RKO. He pops up from an RKO, which doesn't make any sense. And then Cody gives him the crossroads, and then he stands up, and then Randy Orton doesn't hesitate this time, hits him with the RKO, game over, Randy wins. And I'm for it. And I said this the last week podcasting, is that I wanted Randy to chase 15. And I
Yeah.
think they don't have a lot of time with Randy to work towards that number 15 or 16. And so I think honestly by the end of Randy's career he does get 16. Um I think he still has, a handful of years left. And obviously with the
Yeah.
limited schedule, obviously he's definitely getting,
Stretching that out,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And
Um,
so
so
I
yeah,
see him
let's
getting 16. So,
let's
but
run the
obviously
table with him.
yeah,
Let's
but we got to get 15
yeah,
first.
yep,
So,
definitely.
but yeah, so that's kind of the wallop, I guess, and that's so basically WrestleMania right now as it stands. We have
Mhm.
CM Punk versus Roman Reigns, Liv Morgan versus Stephanie Vaquer, Jade Cargill versus Rhea Ripley.
Yep.
And if you caught the post show, Nick Aldis was pissed, and so basically we get this coming Friday, we get Drew McIntyre versus Cody Rhodes. On
Mm.
SmackDown, which I don't think a SmackDown champions defended their title on SmackDown in a long, long time.
Since Drew McIntyre won it, so
Yeah,
back from Cody. So if this is their run back, I mean,
yeah,
heck, you know,
but I want Drew to win. I don't want this to be a triple threat. I
I
you
don't think it
know
has to be. I think if it goes either way, Drew versus Randy, I'm cool with that. Drew versus or Randy versus Cody, I'm cool with that. I'm even more cool with Cody versus Randy and being, kind of like, mentor versus mentee, big bro versus little bro. You know what? I would take that. Hell, I would take a triple threat match. I would.
yeah,
And with Drew being, still being champion, I would
yeah,
take that.
yeah,
But I wonder if Drew's gonna drop because Drew is scheduled to be in the new Highlander movie remake that is currently filming. So I'm just saying, even though Cody ran off and did a movie while he was champion, Drew might not have that same luxury. So if we do see a title change, I wonder, and we don't see Drew for a while, I wonder if it's because of that.
yeah. I mean, I think either way, I'm very certain Drew will be at WrestleMania. I don't think he's going to be, you know, sent off before WrestleMania, and so I don't really care. Like I'm sick of them, shoving wrestlers down our throat and saying deal with it. I don't care if you
Mhm.
don't like it, you're gonna fucking watch it. And it's like their mentality is they don't give a shit what we think.
Right.
And, well, when you don't have, the thing is that I guarantee you at Elimination Chamber, those tickets were handed out for free. I think they said, anybody who wants to come to the show, here's a ticket. Come get your tickets. Get your tickets for free. Get you free because they were quote unquote sold out, which I never believe Michael Cole saying they're sold out. He is the biggest advocate of false information when it comes to how many people are actually at these events because
Um,
they never panned, not once. They did not pan like more than so like here's the audience here, right? Here's a little bit of the entrance here, a little bit of entrance here. They never went beyond that. So I guarantee you that
so
behind the
everything
hard
was
cam
yeah, they
was
had that
probably shit.
all. Yeah, I'm trying to look up really quickly, like, what the ticket sales were. Um, and
Oh,
I don't
WrestleMania is
know,
even worse.
yeah, I don't know where they were, what arena they were in for
No, it's in, I like WrestleMania. Like they're trying to be like nice and be like, oh, you can get 25% off.
yeah.
Like and what's so dumb is that somehow, way, shape, or form, they're still gonna have a big crowd at WrestleMania because people are dumb enough to pay the prices. You can't complain about the prices and then still pay them. Like I feel like the fan base needs to really grow a pair and stop. Like I'll watch it because I'm gonna sit at home and watch it,
Right.
but you know they they basically banned watch parties in Vegas. So they're basically either A, you leave the city to go watch it, or B,
Mhm.
like you just go to it and pay the prices and shut the fuck up. Because
Yeah.
they're literally banning watch parties. Like you can't even watch it at home. You can't watch it at bars. They're basically forcing you, if you want to watch it, you basically have to pay the money to go to the show.
Yeah.
And
So
I
they were
think
at the
that
United Center. So Elimination Chamber 2026 was at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. Um, so around 14,500 tickets, and then seating was expanded to over 17,000. So I guess that arena seats maybe upwards of 7,000 more than the Van Andel Arena. At this particular point, they could have had an elimination chamber in Michigan, in Grand Rapids.
they said there was 19,000 people there.
Well, and seating was expanded to 17,000. If 2,000 people were working and not sitting, because they didn't have a ticket. So like security, cleaning crew, vendors, that sort of thing. I mean, if you want to count all those people to get to 19, right? I mean, whatever,
Yeah, I
you
mean, like,
know.
yeah, you counting talent and guys in the
Yeah.
truck, like
Yeah.
you counting valet drivers. Like it just they always just give these numbers and they just don't seem realistic. Like, it was like, when I think when SmackDown was here and it's like Tim's like, yeah, no, it wasn't is what they said. Like it's and they just pick a number and throw it out there. I mean, now when we were
So,
at WrestleMania 38, obviously we were there,
mhm.
there was most definitely 38,000 people there. Like, but again, that's you know 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And
And the
now
product was different 5 years ago.
yeah,
You
because
know.
freaking Triple H wasn't freaking running it. Um,
Maybe, 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 or
oh, pretty
yeah,
dang close.
yeah, yeah.
But I
But
mean,
yeah,
I
yeah,
I just
it's
I'm really I think I'm with pretty much most people, and it's the product needs to improve. I mean, it's the prices for, you're basically making this, if you want to see Taylor Swift, you're going to pay the money.
Yeah. Well,
And people are going to empty their freaking pocketbooks to bring their family to these events. And there was not actually, Green Shirt Guy was not at Elimination Chamber, at least in his normal seat.
I mean,
So that was definitely something interesting that I didn't see Green Shirt Guy in his normal seat. So maybe, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know, but
who knows? Who knows?
yeah, I mean, we'll, put a good old fashioned pin in this as we do. And we'll definitely, be back as we do, and we'll figure out what has become of the madness that is WWE. Definitely we'll see what becomes of, the stuff for Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes on Friday.
Mhm.
See how is Danhausen going to Raw or SmackDown? I think I'm leaning more towards SmackDown because Raw's already got so much going on.
Yeah.
And SmackDown needs a little help. So, but we'll wait and see as we do. This is the Lockdown Podcast. Peace.